Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I hope you're well. I hope you're cosy. It's a bit chilly today and it's dark and it's threatening to rain, but for the most part I don't really mind because it's definitely the time of year to be hunkering at home, and you know, it's the run up to Christmas. I hope you're all, if you're doing anything festive, I hope you're kind of getting there, enjoying all that. So I'm off out in a second. I'm going to do a little bit more shopping, and I'll show you when I get home, because when was it? A couple of days ago I did my normal weekly shop. Excuse me, but at this time of year the supermarkets have some amazing, ridiculous deals on veggies. So I didn't need to do much shopping anyway, but the bits and bobs I needed, fresh veggies, I spent just a little bit under £4. Just bonkers. And as I was picking things up, I tried not to be greedy. I did think at one point, I thought maybe have 2 of everything and chop stuff up for the freezer. But then I thought, if everyone thought like that, there'd be nothing on the shelves for latecomers. But anyway, I got my bits and bobs, crazy prices. And as I was picking things up, I thought, I couldn't even grow stuff this cheap. Let's think about the things I bought. No, because pretty much all the things that I bought are things that I would buy seed for. So unlike, say, beans, which are essentially free for me to grow because I have my own saved seed, but things like the parsnips and carrots and Brussels sprouts, which I can't grow, despite trying 8 times. I tried 8 times over about 10 years. And one of those times I actually had plug plants that Paul had started from seed and gave to me. And I even managed to, I didn't kill the plants, but I just didn't get a sprout. Anyway, yeah, so those ones where I'm buying seed, organic seed, it's going to be sort of anywhere between sort of £2 and £3-ish. And even though you get myriad seeds in a packet, obviously you've got to account for sort of hit and miss. Yeah, I was looking at this stuff and I was thinking I couldn't grow it this cheap. But then on my way home, I started thinking about this. It's a subject I've thought about a little bit in any case over the last couple of months, is it? Oh my goodness, it's getting on for 3 months now since I put my offer in on the flat that I'm moving to. Or put it this way, it's getting on for 3 months since I had my offer accepted. It's 3.5 months, 3 months, 3 weeks since I actually saw the flat. So the thought has been in my mind about when I go there, what can I grow? What will I grow by way of veggies? Because as I've mentioned before, it's a tiny garden. It's mostly, if you imagine almost a little courtyard garden, it really is tiny. And there's one little narrow bed on one side. It's maybe a foot or so wide. And then there's a little strip, a tiny strip of garden at the front, which is maybe 2 feet deep. And that's it. Of course, there's the opportunity for pots. And I was thinking on the front window, a window box. I could do quite a big window box. So yeah, having bought these ridiculously cheap veggies, I started to think again about what I might grow. So I started sort of having a list, and then I thought, what's that one thing I've said over the years when I was doing the gardening videos? Quite often people would ask me, you know, firstly people would ask me, how much do I need to grow of X vegetable? And I'd say, I don't know, because I don't know how much you eat. You know, everybody's garden is going to be different based on their tastes. You know, I grow a lot of tomatoes because I use them in virtually all my cooking. I used to grow a lot of beans. I think it was something like over 300 bean plants I worked out one year. And of course, because I use beans in so much of my cooking, because I'm a vegetarian, very great thing for a veggie diet. So yeah, what you grow in your garden, everyone's going to be different. But thinking about this new garden, because it's so limited, One of the other things I've said to folk in the past is think about, firstly, what do you eat a lot of? Now, you could say, well, I eat a lot of potatoes. Personally, I don't. But then comes in the second part of the equation, what is expensive to buy? So potatoes are relatively cheap. It makes more sense to grow stuff that's expensive to buy and keep buying the cheaper stuff. So those are kind of the way I'm thinking at the moment. So I was thinking, what do I use a lot of? Well, tomatoes. So with the orientation of the garden as well, there's more sun on the front where I've got that little strip out front. So maybe it'll end up being a tomato garden in front of my front window. I don't know. But certainly one of the things I'm almost certainly going to grow is celery, because, well, see, I've just bought some more celery. I use a lot of celery in my cooking. And the celery I grew in the garden, it's not the celery you trench and have to, then mound up the sides with earth. It just sits on the top and it grows. And it's it's a really attractive plant actually, because it's much darker green than this blanched stuff we get in the supermarkets. And I think that's what gives it way more punch in terms of flavour. I might only have a stalk about 20 centimetres long compared to 30 centimetres. But my 20 centimetres also includes the leaves, great. So it's a smaller plant, and I was thinking, well, actually, how about, actually not the window box, because the window box is facing the sun. Maybe in the back garden, I could have a window box in the back garden, a window box on my bedroom windowsill, because the celery will tolerate some shade. Yeah, why not a window box? But the celery, I can pop a couple of flowers in there amongst them. I could pop a couple of calendula or something. But a window box of celery, why not? And likewise, I was just mentioning tomatoes. Out the front, if I do have a big window box, there's quite a drop from the front windowsill. I could get one of those hanging basket type of tomatoes. Just let it trail over the edge. I don't know, I think the ones I've seen, I'm going to do some research, and that's the fun of having a new garden, isn't it? Is you can get stuck into some research. But I think there's the famous one is called Tumbling Tom, I think. These kind of tumbling hanging basket varieties. The ones I've seen in the past, because I've never grown them, so I've never looked into it really, but they're quite small tomatoes, so you'd need to harvest a lot in order to have bottled tomatoes or tomatoes in the freezer. So it may be that I can find some that are a bit bigger, but certainly I think the point is it's about trying to think creatively about the space. It's a really small garden, yes, but can I still grow stuff? So what else did I put on my list? Again, thinking about the things I use all the time. One of those things is onions. However, they do take up space, and they're not the most pretty plant, let's put it that way. And I think if you're gardening vegetables in your back garden, unless you've got a lot of space and you can dedicate a whole chunk of space to your vegetable garden, that's great. But if it's a small garden and you're gardening it more like a potager, so it's more of a mixed garden, so it's flowers and herbs and dots and veggies around the place, then the onions don't make sense, because I don't think they pay for themselves in terms of the space they take up or how attractive particularly they look. So yeah, I wrote off the onions pretty much straight away. Squash I eat a lot of, and of course the great thing about squash is, as I used to do in the garden, they can be grown vertically. Anyone who's watched my channel for a while will know I get good and big squash harvests, and part of that reason is I pack slightly more in by taking them vertical. I used to make these huge teepees out of tree branches, great huge things, One year I called it my vegetable cathedral because they were like the pillars. There was a walk down the middle, they were like pillars in a church. So yeah, squash is a possibility. One of the main things, I know the orientation of the building and the garden in terms of north, south, east, west, but what I need to look at initially, and I won't be racing to get anything growing straight away, but one of the things for me to observe is the shade. Because even though I know, the compass direction, what I don't know is how much the other buildings around will cast shade. So it might be that I've only got quite a small, in the back garden, quite a small sunny spot. So the squash might not make sense. If I couldn't grow squash for that reason, then I would certainly try and grow some beans. Again, climbing beans, making use of that vertical space. So again, if there's only a small patch of sun, what's my important thing to grow? Yeah, beans. So I think I've narrowed it down to if I could only grow 3 or 4 different things, I think I'm going to be looking at celery, tomatoes and beans. But also for winter, and again, I used to talk about this with my allotment garden, the great thing about Cavallo Nero, a winter brassica, is it's got a very tall, skinny growing aspect. So unlike so many of the other brassicas where you need a couple of feet for each head of cabbage or cauliflower, whatever you're growing, because the Cavallo Nero grows like that, they will fit into a smaller space, and we're not harvesting the whole plant in one go. It's literally taking a few, this is my action of snapping leaves off the stem. It's just harvesting 2 or 3 leaves at a time. Well, when I was at the allotment, I would harvest maybe 15 to 20 leaves, bring them home for the week. But of course, because it's my back garden, I can literally go out and harvest 2 leaves. That's it. That's part of my supper that evening. So yeah, I'm looking forward to experimenting. I'm looking forward to kind of doing a bit of research because, like I said, this is a whole new ball game for me. Of course, there are always the options of having containers. One of my big staples in my cooking is carrots. I use carrots a lot. I just don't think, for the amount of carrots I use, I think they're going to be like in the onion category. For the amount I use, the space I would need, I just don't have. And yes, I know you can grow them in pots and buckets and what have you. My sister had a beautiful crop of carrots for one Christmas, but literally one pot, the whole pot was gone in one harvest for the Christmas table. And again, even organic carrots, I can get organic carrots for, I think they're usually about 99p, call it a quid, for a 750 gram bag, which is, it's fair. I've got a real croak today, sorry. Pretty reasonable in the shops. Organic ones. Non-organic, sometimes like this last week, they've been so cheap. So yeah, it's food for thought. I would love in my head to plan it a bit more because I am a planner. And the thing with gardening is, well, especially growing veg, you need to be a planner because you need to hit certain marks in the year in terms of sowing, planting out, etc., etc. So I would really love to plan, but I don't, just in case this whole thing falls apart. It would, in my head I've been planning the kitchen and etc., etc., and I can't face the prospect of planning the garden and then losing out. So I'm trying not to go there too much, but I am thinking about it a bit, especially having bought those cheap veggies. If you only had limited space, what would you grow? You personally, that was another question I used to get asked when I had the garden is, if you could only grow 3 veg, what would they be? And without batting an eyelid, without having to think twice, I would say tomatoes, beans and squash. Squash because, well, I like them. Also, they're beautiful in all their shapes, sizes, colours, textures. But the great thing about squash is they store with no electricity. You don't need to do anything to store them. Harvest them at the right time, when the skins have started curing in the garden already, just before that first frost. So usually in the UK, that's, for me, it was always about the middle of October for the squash harvest. But yeah, so they're one of my top veggies to grow if you're looking for self-reliance, because you can have a power cut for 6 months and you'd still have your squash. They wouldn't be ruined. And, excuse me, unlike, say, with bottling and all that kind of stuff, they don't take any fuel at the bottom. When you're bottling, if you've got your water bath canner on the stove for an hour and a half, that's an hour and a half of fuel you're using to do your bottling. So yeah, squash are great because they don't need any of that. Beans, the same. If you don't have a freezer, store them dry. But of course, then you're using energy to rehydrate them. I would never be without beans though. Veggie, staple. Likewise, tomatoes. Can't live without tomatoes. Anyway, so yeah, I was just having those thoughts the other day about what would I grow? What will I grow? Trying to think positively. So this afternoon, no, in a minute, what am I doing? Yeah, so I did my normal weekly shop, but I really didn't need much of anything because I've got plenty of all my store cupboard staples, etc., etc. Oh, my freezer is now completely empty of any homegrown produce. I used up, a few weeks ago, I used up the last of my tomatoes, and I have finally used up the very last of my coco de pampole. But, sorry, this is annoying today. I've always tended to use freezer produce first, just in case there's a major power cut and the whole lot in the freezer goes off. So I've always used my freezer produce first. Obviously at the moment as well, I'm thinking in terms of, I mean, I don't know when the move is going to happen. I still don't have a date, but I'm thinking in terms of running the freezer down in terms of how much is in there, because I don't want things to spoil when I move. So it's kind of, yeah, it was a bit of a moment of using my last coco de pampole from the freezer, because I've still got a ton of dried beans up there, some in the cupboard. So now, and I have to think about this in terms of planning for cooking. Now I'm going to have to think in terms of batch cooking beans, not to actually necessarily cook with them there and then, but do big batches of beans, as in rehydrating them. And then once they're rehydrated, then I can freeze them so that they're quick and easy to use for the cooking in the coming days. Yeah, it's an interesting time for me at the moment, because I'm getting used to not having food from the garden, and now I'm going to have to get used in my planning to cooking dried beans again, which I rarely do. But it's all good. So in a minute, I am going to starting to drizzle. Never mind. I'm going to pop out again, because bearing in mind that my weekly shop was less than £4, I thought to myself, why don't I use the other £11 from my budget and get some blooming Christmassy food? I don't normally get extra stuff in for Christmas, particularly. I mean, I might have, obviously with my treats for a tenner, sometimes includes like a bit of chocolate or some treaty stuff. But I don't really, I mean, I see people in the supermarkets with their shopping trolley piled high, tons and tons of booze, and you know what, good on you, enjoy it. But it's not something I've really partaken in. But I'm going to today, so I'm going to go out with me brolly and spend that last 11 quid on my on some Christmassy food, which will be lovely. Now, sorry, excuse me a second. And we're back in the room. Just quickly before I go out, I want to say a thank you to Lisa for sending me a book, The Long Walk by Sławomir Rawicz, a Polish guy. Oh my goodness. So Lisa said, in her note to me, Lisa said, please find enclosed a copy of one of the best non-fiction books I've ever read. When I read it years ago, I genuinely could not put it down. Lisa, I hear you, girl. It came out in 1999, so I'm a bit late to the party, comme toujours. It's a book I've known of since it was published. I've handled it a few times when I was selling at the bookshop. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Lisa. It's not an easy read in terms of the subject matter. So we are in early days of Second World War. We're at the tail end of 1939. He is a Polish soldier. He gets arrested by the Russians, and it's a completely spurious charge. Ends up being sent to one of the gulags. His sentence is 25 years hard labour in one of the gulags in Siberia, just shy of the Arctic Circle. I say it's not an easy read because the first third of the book, or first third or so, deals with his time in Siberia. Well, it deals with his time in prison in Moscow when he's being interrogated, tortured. And then this incredibly long journey, firstly in cattle wagons across the Trans-Siberian Railway. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks. And then the final part of the journey, which is I think about 1,000 miles, they walk. It's Siberia, it's the winter, they get a bit of bread each day, that's it. It's horrific. Why am I recommending it? I mean, it is truly horrific. Anyone who's read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, you might have an inkling, but it's horrific, it's brutal. It's hard to imagine human beings treating other human beings as he was treated. But the next 2/3 of the book, he and a gang escape. It's unbelievable that they can escape at all. And the rest of the book is their 4,000-mile journey on foot from the frozen wastes of Siberia down to India, which includes weeks and weeks and weeks crossing the Gobi Desert. That's in the sort of, think of Mongolia, that region. What I will say is, normally, by this time of year, I have a book on the go all the time. Every day, there's a book on the go. I finished this about 4 days ago, and I haven't picked up another book yet because I cannot stop thinking about this book. There's a bit, about 2/3 of the way in, which made me sob my heart out. And then again, right at the end, the last 10 pages, once I get to India, I read the whole of the last 10 pages, my tears were just freely running down my face. But I think by the end, they were running down my face out of joy, joy for them, relief that it was over, incredulity at what they'd done. It's ridiculous. If you saw this as a film, I think you'd think, nah, they've gone too far now. This is way too far-fetched. There is no way any human being could survive any of those environments. You know, there were times in the desert they didn't have any water for 6 or 7 days. It's like, how did they live? At the end, you know, we find out just how how ill they've become in the 12 months, but they make it. And I think what I loved about it was this sheer tenacity, this will to live, this amazing human spirit to survive. It's incredible. And of course the relationships within the gang, so beautiful, so beautiful. So Lisa, thank you so much, darling. You were right, it was unputdownable. I started it one night about 1 in the morning, and at 3 o'clock in the morning I thought, right, I've got to put this down and try to sleep. Then I picked it up the next evening about 10 o'clock in the evening, and I didn't put it down until I finished it. I don't know what the time was, it was late, but yeah, gobbled it up in one go. Fantastic. The Long Walk, the true story of a trek to freedom. Slavomir Ravich. Read it if you can. If you can get your hands on a copy, it's utterly awesome, inspiring. It's all the superlatives, but for once, the superlatives the book really deserves all the superlatives. Right, now I'm waffling. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do a little bit of Christmas food shopping. So I will see you back here in 40 minutes or so. Shouldn't take me long. See you in a second, in your time. I'm back with my treasure and my stupid grin. Oh, that actually, that warmed me up a bit. Just motoring down the road. I might get chilly. I've got another layer if I get chilly. Right, what did I buy? So I've just done a quick reckoning. I've spent £9 and 10p, so I could still give myself another £2. I'll put it in the penny jar. I have bought, obviously, I needed to have some mince pies. They were £1.25, that's from Lidl. Just sort of a bog standard. There were some deluxe ones with almonds in and things like that, but don't put nuts in my cakes. Yeah, I mean, look, it's the law, isn't it? I would be breaking the law if I went through Christmas without eating a single mince pie, for goodness sakes. I haven't looked at the calories. Who cares? 220 calories each one. But you know what? One of those of an evening when I'm under my quilt on the sofa with a book. How gorgeous. Rattle, 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 rattle. And then, of course, some satsumas. Again, I think satsumas are the law at Christmas, aren't they? And I have in previous years, I bought them as part of my treats for a tenner, but that tenner's going less and less far these days. And then I thought, hang on a minute, no satsumas. So they were on the list today. What did I say? 6 for £1. And then oh, these I needed for something else. So some crackers. These are black pepper and sea salt crackers, and it says perfect with your favourite savoury topping. I'll show you the topping in a minute. These were Lidl. Okay, so the Satsuma's greengrocer crackers, Lidl, for 89p. I don't think that was too bad, 89p. I had a penchant, I can't remember why, much earlier in the year, like I'm talking like maybe back to April, May time. I suddenly had a penchant for, I fancied Philadelphia, I know, yuck geez, but I wanted a bit of Philadelphia on a cream cracker. Jacob's cream crackers, and I went, no, I'm not paying that. It was something like £1.50 for a packet of cream crackers. It's like, no, of course Lidl do a cheaper version. But yeah, so 89p for some nice crackers. I think that's okay. Put it this way, I don't care, it's Christmas. Then, to go with my crackers, can you see what it is yet? Oh God, I shouldn't do Rolf Harris's voice. It's 70s kid. Yeah, it's a mature blue Stilton. Oh God, I can't wait. I cannot wait to get my laughing gear around that. Oh, and I should just say, yes, of course it's vegetarian. The number of people who say to me, oh, cheese isn't vegetarian. This is a rennet-free cheese. I have been vegetarian for over 40 years. I know that some cheese isn't vegetarian and some cheese is, so obviously I look for the cheese that's vegetarian, and this is, yay! Oh, it's got a DO, a designated origin. What's this designated origin? Does it have to be, does it have to be British? The ultimate British blue, matured the same way as it has been for over 100 years for a mellow taste and a rich, creamy texture. Oh, I can't wait. Oh my goodness. I haven't had Stilton for ages. I think probably the last time, sometime in the last 2 years, I think Richard and Paul brought some over. So I'm gonna, that's not gonna last long, is it? I have to be, but you see, the thing is, with something like a blue cheese, that strong flavour, you don't need a lot to enjoy it. So yeah, it'll be gone in a couple of evenings. But then, to go with my satsumas, I'm getting chilly. Oh, that's the thing, isn't it? You come in from outside and you feel really warm, and then you sit still for a second. You can't have... See, this is how my evenings are going to go for the next week or so. This is my 10 o'clock spot. Now, don't worry about me eating late, because remember, I go to bed really late. So me eating at 10 o'clock is like normal. People eating at 6 o'clock, it's okay. I'm going to have myself a mince pie, a satsuma, and then, you see what's in there? And then 4 or 5 walnuts. I love them. I even love that sound they make. Oh, you can't hear it from the bag, can you? And only at Christmas. It would be nice to find a supplier of walnuts in their shells throughout the year, but we only ever seem to see them at Christmas. And they were, I've not been, oh yeah, I have. So they were, I think it was £10 a kilo. So this little lot was £3.27. And that came to £9.10. I want to count the walnuts. Oh, too hard. No, it's too tedious to. Maybe there's 30 in there. So if I think about it, if I do it over the next 6 nights, that's 5 walnuts a night. But that's enough, isn't it? You know, I'm not going to sit there and crack them on, just mindless. That's the thing. I'm not going to eat them mindlessly. I'm going to have a little moment and a really mindful moment of enjoying a mince pie, a satsuma, and a little bunch of walnuts. Oh. Is it bedtime yet? Can I have them yet? Oh, I'm chuffed, I'm chuffed, I'm chuffed, I'm chuffed. I think that I might have to do similar next year with my weekly shop that covers the Christmas period. Try and do as little normal shopping as possible and give myself space to do some Christmas shopping. I'm chuffed, I'm chuffed. Right, lovelies, I need to tuck these bits and pieces away because otherwise they'll all be gone this afternoon. And yeah, I'm just trying to think, when will I see you next? I think the next time I see you might be Christmas. So until then, please enjoy this holiday time. If that's what you do, if you gain enjoyment from this period, have as much fun as you possibly can. If you don't care for it at all, well, you know what, have fun with whatever you're doing. The main thing is, try and be happy. That's what it always boils down to. All right, gorgeosities, I will see you again really soon. For now though, cheerio.